Life in the ocean. We talked about 7 physical factors that affect life and 3 biological factors. And if you just look down at the bottom, I've actually given you the 2 essay questions, and one of them is list and discuss 2 important physical and 2 important biological factors that limit productivity. So what that means is that you're going to have to do 2 of each. So don't just list them and write them down. List and discuss. It's 10 points. So discuss means talk about it for a paragraph. So that would be kind of 4 short paragraphs would be listing and discussing 2 of each. So I'm not going to go over all of these again. But the most important physical factors are life in the ocean, right? So you're supposed to know where's the photic zone, the euphotic zone, and the aphotic zone. So the photic zone is here at the top, right? You can see that, where the light is. And the aphotic zone is in the dark. And then the euphotic zone is the very top of the photic zone. And can you see how it's green? It's green because guess what? There's plants there photosynthesizing. So who lives in each, right? Photosynthetic plants like phytoplankton or diatoms and dinoflagellates live in the euphotic zone. Also kelp lives in the euphotic zone. So marine plants such as diatoms, dinoflagellates, the phytoplankton, and kelp live in the euphotic zone. Who lives in the photic zone are creatures that need to see to survive. So all the creatures that would be eating the plants, the herbivorous fish, and creatures such as that. And who lives in the aphotic zone are creatures that don't need to see. The creatures, the benthic creatures, the deep sea creatures live in the aphotic zone in the dark where there's no light. Okay? So what else have we got here? You've also got this concept of pelagic, and you've got the concept of benthic. So benthic creatures live on the sea floor, and pelagic creatures live in the water column. Okay, we talked about that also. What else have I got for you? Come on, next one. So here it is again. Here's your, I don't like dysphotic, so let's just forget about that. Here's photic zone where the light is. Photic zone where the light is. Euphotic zone at the top where you get photosynthesis, and aphotic, no sunlight, nothing. Okay? And here you've got some examples of the phytoplankton, the diatoms that live up in the photic zone. And here's some other pelagic plankton creatures. So these are phytoplankton, plant plankton, and these are zooplankton, animal plankton. So zooplankton, they can swim, but they swim badly. Okay, another zooplankton, an animal plankton, pelagic, bad swimmer. Another plankton here, a copepod, a pelagic bad swimmer, okay? Part of the plankton their whole life. And here's yet another plankton, a jellyfish, plankton their whole life. Okay? So these guys are all creatures that live in the pelagic zone, right? Both plankton, these are all plankton. All these plankton, 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 and nekton, right? Nekton are the good swimmers. So in the pelagic zone, you've got bad swimmers that are plankton, and you've got some examples, right? Zooplankton, such as the ctenophores, the krill, the small shrimp, the copepods, right? And phytoplankton, the diatoms and dinoflagellates. Those are your examples of plankton that live in the pelagic zone. You've also got nekton that live in the pelagic zone, and nekton are your good swimmers. So here's tuna, sharks, whales, seals, swordfish, all the good swimming creatures. And then you've got the creatures that live in the benthic zone. So you've got benthic sessile creatures such as coral that live on the seafloor, and you can see here some benthic fish that live on the seafloor. And here's a sea anemone also attached on the seafloor, benthic. And you've got benthic vagrants that crawl around the seafloor, okay, like a lobster or a snail, lives on the seafloor, crawls around the seafloor, okay? So then we talked about other physical factors such as temperature. You get ectotherms, and those are creatures that have a body temperature that they're cold-blooded, so their temperature is the same as the surroundings. Most marine organisms are ectotherms. and they have very low metabolic rate, which means they don't need to eat a lot, but they're very sensitive. They can only live in a narrow temperature range. Most sea creatures are this, but you do have some endothermic sea creatures, and those are the mammals and the birds, the ones who have high metabolic rates. They're warm-blooded. They've got to eat a lot to keep their metabolism so high, but they can have larger ranges because they can kind of go anywhere. Their body temperature is not dependent on the surrounding ocean, okay? We also discussed salinity and freshwater fish. They don't drink, but they have to pee a lot. And marine fish, they drink a lot, and they have to secrete the salt through these salt glands, okay? We also talked about dissolved nutrients, and I'm not going to re-give the whole nutrient cycle again, but nitrogen and phosphorus, the two most important nutrients, and I want you to know that these are cycled around again and again and again. So remember, you've got bacteria that decompose dead things and poop and everything and recycle it back into the system so that the plants take up the nutrients, and then the plants are eaten by the animals and the nutrients go back throughout the cycle. Okay? Nutrients really, really important. You can have a lot of sunlight, but if you don't have nutrients, you don't have very much productivity. We talked about in the ocean, gases are needed, and that's because for photosynthesis as well as respiration, you need carbon dioxide and you need oxygen. So those two gases need to be present, dissolved in the water. We also noticed that the ocean has to have a pH that's balanced, the acid-base balance, and that for most of the ocean, that is not a problem except when there's a lot of pollution. And hydrostatic pressure is important for the deep sea creatures because they are under a lot of pressure. So I'm just doing a really quick review. Then the biological factors, crowding, right? There's only limitations for space, and I think I have a slide for that. This slide you'll recognize. So there could be plenty of nutrients, plenty of food, plenty of sunlight, hardly any predators, but these mussels are limited by crowding, okay? Predation limits how many creatures there's going to be. So if you've got a lot of predators, there's going to be less of you, right? Competition for food, for mates, and availability of prey, right? Also, there could be, if there's not enough food, that's a limiting factor. So you see the difference between the physical factors are all physical things, and the biological factors have to do with the other creatures, right? So if there's too many predators, that means there's a lot of other creatures. Or if there's not enough food, right? So if you're one of these mussels, let's say, or you're a snail, you need to have enough algae. If there's a limit on algae, then you won't be able to eat and you won't be able to survive. Okay, so that's how the biological factors are. And I just wanted to say again, don't rely just on watching this review. You need to read your book, you need to go over your notes, and you need to make sure you're watching some of the other movies from the rest of this section in class, because I noticed on some of the other tests you guys aren't looking back and really studying. So many of you actually got really good grades, but for those of you who want to improve your grades, you need to, not just watch this one little video, but really please study. Okay, so benthic lives on the bottom. Benthic sessile, attached to the sea floor, doesn't move. The ocean brings its food to it. So you got to name some creatures that are benthic, right? The coral, benthic and sessile. Sea anemones, these mussels, right? They're sessile. They live on the sea. Well, here they're living on these ropes, but normally they live on the sea floor. They're attached to a rock or something, and they're sessile. Benthic and vagrant, the snails, lobsters, crabs, all the creatures, some fish are benthic and vagrant, live on the seafloor, crawling around or swimming around the seafloor. You also need to be able to give examples. Pelagic, who swims in the water column? Plankton, nekton, who are they? Name them.